very warm welcome to the second session of the Appleton Space Conference. So good to see everybody here. The first session really set the context for the space sector, also provided some fascinating insights into outer space as well. But in this session, we're going to focus in on the essential ingredients that's really required to deliver not only the National Space Strategy, but to expand our horizons. And that's the people. Without the amazing people, just a few of which we've got in the room and online today, progress would be limited, horizons would not be stretched. So clearly, we need to make sure that we've got these people coming through. But we keep hearing from so many organisations the increasing challenge of finding the right skills at the right time and in the right places. Hopefully the next hour or so will shine a light on this topic and inspire you to help see how we can address some of these skills challenges. But really, before you can start addressing any of the skills challenges, you've got to really understand where the problems are. And who better than to set the scene than Joseph Dudley, who is director of the Space Skills Alliance, which is a think tank really working hard to understand what's going on in the skills space. So I'd like to introduce you to the stage, Joseph.
I should have some slides appearing momentarily.
Use the clicker, go advanced one.
Lovely, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Joseph Dudley. I am director of the think tank and consultancy called the Space Skills Alliance. And I'm going to talk to you today about the space skills gap and, more importantly, what we can do to address it. Now, the first question that we've got to ask ourselves when we are talking about the space skills gap is, what is a space skill? What do we mean when we talk about space skills? The answer, as with all things, is not clear-cut. It rather depends on your definition both of space and of skill. But to avoid us getting into questions of ontology, I'm going to annoy everybody a little bit, and I'm going to group the technical skills of space into 5 themes: aeromechanical engineering, electronics engineering, systems engineering, maintenance, manufacturing and materials, and software and data. And these themes come from the Spacecraft Competencies Framework, which we released earlier this year. Now, of course, technical skills are by no means the only skills that we care about. Transferable skills are extremely important and, in fact, in higher demand than technical ones across space jobs. But since they are less specific to the space sector and generally companies have an easier time recruiting for them, I'm going to talk about them a little bit less. Okay, so that's space skills out of the way. But since the title of the presentation talks about the space skills gap, the next question that we have to address is, what is this gap? How big is the gap? Well, in the UK, there are something in the region of 1,300 space companies. And about 3/4 of those are recruiting, planning to recruit over the next 3 years. And of those, about 70% are struggling to recruit. So taking those two numbers together, about half of all space businesses have skill shortages. So this is a big problem. This is a major barrier to the growth of our sector and to our progress in science. So the next question we might reasonably ask ourselves is why? Why do we have this problem? And the answer, in a word, is tech. Let's have a closer look at those skills that we're asking for. These are the results of an analysis of about 800 space job adverts. Right at the top there, we've got those transferable skills, interpersonal skills, communication skills, analytical skills. Demand for these is very, very high. Number 3 on our list, the first of our technical skills, is software development, asked for by almost 50% of space jobs. And what about those other technical skills? Well, you can see electronics down there, about 17%. Everything else, mechanical, aerospace, engineering, these things barely feature. We graduate nearly 15,000 aerospace graduates every year. And even if the aerospace industry hoovers up 99% of those, we are still left with plenty. Space grad schemes are massively oversubscribed. Now, our biggest problem is that as the downstream grows, as more and more upstream engineering work becomes computer-based, the core skills that we are looking for are exactly the same ones as everybody else: programming, data analysis, machine learning. We are competing with the tech sector, we are competing with Silicon Valley, and we are losing. The Edge Foundation estimates that there are more than 600,000 tech sector vacancies in the UK. In space, there are perhaps 1,000 at most. We are a very small fish in a very big pond. Now, it's easy to look at these numbers and throw up our hands and say, well, what can we do in the face of all of this? Right? After all, Facebook earns about twice as much as the whole UK space sector. But the answer is actually quite a lot. Because we in the space sector have a secret weapon that no other sector can boast. And that is that we have a 200,000-year head start on everybody else. Because that is how long there have been humans. And that is how long we have been looking up in awe at the stars. Space inspires like nothing else. 86% of children and 75% of adults say that they are interested in space. It's no coincidence that the two richest people in the world made their billions in the tech sector, and they are choosing to spend it in the space sector. But interest alone is not enough. Joining the space sector is like committing a crime. It requires three things: motivation, opportunity, and capability. Motivation is, I want to work in space. Opportunity is a combination of awareness, I know about the jobs that are available, and access, I am able to apply to those jobs. Finally, capability is, I have the skills to do this job. And here it's important to note that this is a combination of actual capability, whether you can do the job, and perceived capability, whether you think that you can do the job. When we do something like outreach, we are mostly doing motivation. We're getting kids excited about space. We might also be building a little bit of awareness, especially when our outreach involves career resources. Education and training is about capability, giving people the skills that they need. There are some things like work experience that fall somewhere in between. They are about building that capability, but they are also about building awareness of the kinds of jobs that are available. Similarly, competitions are a motivator and a capability builder. So solving the space skills gap is very simply about making sure that we are doing all three of these things and that we are doing them equally. If we focus too much on one of these things, say on outreach that boosts motivation, and we don't then have clear career opportunities for people to follow, then we fail. If we have an abundance of capable, talented graduates who have no awareness of the space sector, then we fail. So let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. Motivation is probably the area where we are putting the most effort. In many ways, it's the easiest one. We are pushing on that open door. But while interest and excitement about space are certainly powerful motivators, we also need to think about more practical ones, like good salaries and job security, and nice working environments. And these are especially important to more experienced professionals that we want to attract to the sector. Another motivator that is growing in importance is social impact. The generations now entering the workforce are more socially conscious than their predecessors. But at the same time, our sector is being associated with environmental damage and with tourism for the rich. A survey in Cornwall, where Cosmic Girl will hopefully very soon be launching, found that residents see space as a playground for the rich and famous that regions like Cornwall should have nothing to do with. And even Prince William has weighed in on this point. We have to take swift action to make sure that we do not let the brand of the space sector become toxified. We need to be emphasizing the role that space plays in detecting and combating climate change, providing that motivation for the generations who care about social impact. But amidst all of this focus on building interest, we must also remember that interest is not the same as awareness. And so we've got to turn our attention to opportunity. Though space is increasingly present in our culture and in our school curriculums, the way that it is presented often reinforces stereotypes that give people a very narrow view of the careers our sector offers. The roles most closely associated are the ones that uniquely involve space: astronaut, astronomer, rocket scientist. These are the ones that children mention when prompted. An extra problem for us in the UK is that for many, NASA is the only space agency. If you want to get yourself some space swag, and secretly, that's the only reason we attend these conferences in the first place, then you can head down to the high streets and you can visit Next or River Island or Boohoo or House of Fraser or Marks and Spencer's or John Lewis or ASOS or Primark. And you can get yourself a t-shirt with the NASA meatball on it. You can get yourself a bedspread with the shuttle on it. And you can become a walking advertisement for NASA. Good luck doing the same thing for the UK Space Agency or for the European Space Agency. And so I say to anybody from the Space Agency here today, please go back to your team. Tell them to get their logo on every conceivable item of clothing. If I can't kit myself out from head to toe in UK Space Agency branded merchandise, we have failed. Outside of branded clothing, careers awareness is actually an area where we're doing pretty well. We have some good careers resources. We need to get more of those into the hands of children, their parents, their teachers, and so on. But overall, we're doing pretty well. But if we start looking around for resources for career changes, it's a different story. They've not been a priority for us. Instead, what we tend to do is poach from our rivals and make investing in training somebody else's responsibility. There are no space conversion courses. The first result here is about nursing. The fourth is about health and safety. And you compare that to the wealth of information for those who want to leave disciplines like engineering to convert to finance, to consulting, to law. This is a gap we need to fill, and it's one we can do very easily and very cheaply. Finally, we turn to capability. And when we take a closer look at capability, we find that most capability problems are actually motivation and opportunity problems in disguise. Because it's not that anybody isn't able to learn the skills that are needed. It's because they either don't want to or they don't have the opportunity to. And a big problem here is that our model for getting the people with the capabilities that we need goes something like this. We want graduates who have studied physics or aerospace engineering. These make up about 43% of all the people in the space sector. And in order to study those at university, you need to have done maths or physics at A level. And in order to do that, well, you need to have done pretty well at those subjects at GCSE. You need to have chosen to do triple science. And you need to have planned all of this out at age 14. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was 14, I was mostly preoccupied with the fact I'd started to smell pretty bad. We are not the people that we were at 14, and yet we are too often trapped in our careers by the choices of our teenage selves. So as a sector, we need to be open to other pathways. We need to ditch the requirements for degrees when they are unnecessary. We need to ask for the skills, and we need to assess people on those skills without worrying about exactly how they are required. We need to create flexible and accessible opportunities for people to gain those skills, regardless of whether they are 14 or 40. It should be simple, it should be quick, it should be affordable. And this is an area where our competitors in the tech sector excel. The other day on the tube, I saw this ad. It says, study software engineering, web development, or data science online and flexibly in an intensive 16-week coding bootcamp and get career support to land your first job in tech. Who can say no to this? They've even got scholarships available. Compare that with a degree course that is 10 times as long, and it's a no-brainer. Where is our 16-week boot camp for Earth observation, for satellite ops? This is another easy win. And in addition to building these actual capabilities, there are perceived capabilities. Space is associated strongly with intelligence. This kind of language around having the most talented people in the world join your team has an impact. Young people, especially young women, already feel that they are not clever enough to study science, particularly physics, particularly space science and technology. That space is so incredibly inspirational is a gift. But this unique advantage has also made us complacent. We have used it as a crutch to save us from doing the hard work of building a robust talent pipeline. And now that complacency is coming back to bite us. Our job adverts are poor. We scored 50 space job adverts against 10 best practice criteria, like having a clear description of what the role entails, avoiding gendered language, and only 4 got a score of more than 75 out of 100. Our pay isn't competitive. The tech sector is paying £10,000 to £20,000 more at all levels of seniority. Our workers are experiencing discrimination. More than 40% of women in space report experiencing discrimination. We can do better. We must do better. Now, I'm very close to my time limit, and I don't just want to be the guy who highlights all of the problems and then leaves. The focus of the Space Skills Alliance is on solutions. So I'm going to talk about just 5 to get us started. The first is to develop a space competencies framework, a common language to talk about these problems and to develop progression pathways. You've already seen the first iteration of that. The tech sector is on version 8. We are on version 1. Second, we need to adopt best practices in recruitment, because bad job adverts and bad application processes turn away good candidates. We need to be more open to these non-traditional routes into the sector, looking for skills rather than qualifications. Number 3, we need to create more opportunities for young people to gain experience. We've got a lot of keen grads and not enough experienced people. So we need a fast track, like the civil service fast stream, like Teach First, to get them that experience quickly. 4, we've got to make it easy for experienced people in other sectors to change careers and come and join us. We have a lot of resources for graduates, but hardly any for anyone longer. And finally, we need to make training more responsive and more accessible. 4-year degree courses no longer fit the bill. We need boot camps, we need micro-credentials, we need innovation so that we can have courses that can adapt to our changing needs. And we need these courses to be discoverable, because it doesn't matter how good the training that you're providing is if nobody can find it. We've created the Space Training Catalog to help with this problem, but there is more to be done. So let's share our problems, let's share our solutions, and together we can achieve more than if we go it alone. Because as Paul said earlier, space is a team sport. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Stay for a second in case there's a quick question. But I think you've really shone a mirror against the sector, highlighted a number of the challenges, the issues, some of those that we're going to come on to next in terms of how we make sure that we are accessible to all as a sector. Does anybody have a quick question from the audience? Oh, loads of hands going up. I'm going to have to pick on one. Shall I go one just up there? And don't worry, because this Joseph's around for the rest of the day, so there's plenty of opportunity for conversation on this.
In your talk, you didn't reflect on location, geography. I work with a number of startups. I mean, the space industry is predominantly concentrated in the southeast, which has high levels of employment, high levels of job mobility, turnover of staff compared to other parts of the country. Startup I work in Wales gets 50 applications for every space startup, every job it puts out. I think that location and the reality of a business being near to you, where you've been educated, where you've been grown up, is also important, but you don't address that in your talk. Do you consider that to be immaterial? Or?
No, I think it's very important. I like to think the Space Forge, which is the startup you're mentioning, has benefited. We've had lots of good conversations with them. Location is really important. I didn't mention it primarily due to lack of time, but it comes under that access point. If you cannot get to your space job, if there is no affordable housing available, if there is no good public transport, if there are no good links, if you don't have that access within your community, then you cannot get into the space sector. You cannot get a space job. So those things are also extremely important and a part of that framework that I'm describing.
And it also removes the remoteness from the local community, that as you're growing up, as you're making those choices, you know it is an option.
Absolutely.
Relevant to you.
I can sense there were loads of questions in the room, but I really want to keep us on time. So I'm going to have to say thank you very much to Joseph. Give him another quick round of applause.